Carpool day with Margaret.
Hey, Dawson.
Shall we?
Let's get to work. Commuting.
Don't you think we could imagine a better way to get to work? You know, make it commuting a little bit more like a ride.
Oh, yeah, I wish. What would you do to make commuting an attraction?
It's got to be faster, a lot more turns, a little more thrilling, like Radiator Springs Racers.
I'd want it to be gentle and mellow, like the Navi River journey. What makes a good attraction for you?
One where the thrill and the story line up.
Yeah, you have to have context, right? And you can't just have a thrill ride for thrill's sake. It has to make sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I've always loved Big Thunder Mountain.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's a roller coaster, but it's got a story to it. You're in the Southwest. You're not just moving fast. You've been blown out of a mine shaft with dynamite. It's just so great to have that thrill, but also have that narrative.
When I think about my favorite attractions in Disneyland, they're the ones that are completely inside the building, because we can take that environment and make it into anything we want it to be. We can make it into space, going inside a cave, and the best part about it is that we get to go to a totally different world. It's really hard to make a great ride. You're moving people through a completely immersive world, and it needs to move them not only physically, but also emotionally.
It's art, it's storytelling, it's technology, it's engineering, and they all have to come together to create that unforgettable experience. And in this lesson, you'll learn what it takes to design an attraction, how theme and story influence ride design, ride systems, vehicle design, and a whole lot more.
And by the end of the lesson, you'll have created an attraction of your very own.
Hi, I'm Andrea Lawler, and I'm a ride control software engineer at Walt Disney Imagineering. I'll be your host for this lesson on attraction design. The goal of this lesson is to introduce you to the art and engineering of attraction design. We'll also help you through the process of designing a concept for your own attraction. In our parks, within a land, there are many kinds of experiences for guests of different ages. These experiences include rides, restaurants, and live entertainment, and they are designed to engage our guests in the story and theme of the land. That means that these experiences need to fit that land and feel natural there. So let's first discuss how the story and theme of a land informs the design of an attraction.
Everything starts with theme and story, and those inform the experiences that we deliver on our rides. The rides are purely a physical way of moving people through that story and through that experience.
When we think about our story or the theme, there's always this unifying idea behind everything. And whatever you decide, it has to reinforce that.
Oftentimes, I refer to the story as kind of our true north, because it's going to be the thing that is going to inform our design, our approach to design, and everything that we do to bring those immersive lands and attractions to our guests.
So knowing it's going in Adventureland, you're already thinking now of a time period and a place. It's going in Tomorrowland, very different time, very different place. So when you're designing the attraction, it's really important to have a solid grounding for exactly the story that you're telling and how that fits in the bigger story of your land.
The story in Cars in Radiator Springs is the guests enter the town of Radiator Springs. They're joined with their car that's going to take them through and show them their town. And so as you're going through the town, you keep getting these hints that there's something more going on in this town than just everyday life. There's hints that there might be a race going on, and you know, there's a big race and you're there to watch it. And as the ride progresses, you learn there is a big race, but you're not there to watch it, you're there to be in it. And so you enter the race and you participate in the race and get to race, you know, the guests that are across from you on the track and experience the thrill of that.
In Shanghai Pirates of the Caribbean, our guests are the crew of Jack Sparrow, and Jack Sparrow uses us as a tool to accomplish his goal of stealing Davy Jones' treasure.
Many of our attractions tell stories that rely on a blend of physical thrills with more calm or thoughtful moments. So we use different ride systems for different kinds of stories. Some of the ride systems that we can choose are roller coasters, suspended systems like a Ferris wheel, simulator rides like with Star Tours, boats that move through a flume of water, ride vehicles that move on tracks, or ride vehicles that can move anywhere without a track. So how do we choose a ride system that will best support a story?
When you're designing the show, you want the best supporting ride system that goes with the story that you're telling.
So for instance, if you're talking about Avatar or Pandora in Animal Kingdom, which really conveys this sense of being one with nature and how awe-inspiring it is, you don't necessarily want to maybe scare the pants off of them. And so that's going to inform what kind of ride system do you want? What kind of motions are you looking for? And I think a really good example is if you think of cradling, like cradling a baby, there's just this natural sense, if you're cradled, of, oh, I'm safe. It's this very nurturing and comfortable feeling versus the sensation of falling, right? Falling to me is terrifying, and it conveys a completely different sense of thrill. And so if you kind of juxtapose those two things between thrilling and then comfortable and very safe, you can see why a boat ride was chosen for Navi River Journey, because you want to be comfortable, you want to feel at home, you want that sense of oneness, and then that obviously is in tune with the whole story of being one with nature.
Radiator Springs Racers was a really fun idea and attraction, which was obviously all about, from the movies, the racing sequence. And so we knew that we had to have a ride system that allowed guests to race each other in a vehicle.
Oftentimes we like to do attractions where we have a lot of variety, where guests are perhaps moving quickly through a space. At other times we're going to want them to slow down. And just like good theater, we have our cadences that we need to adhere to, of surprising moments, relaxing moments, fast moments, and of course that big payoff moment.
So the ride system gets paired with a story based on the type of emotion that you're trying to get across in that story.
To create unforgettable experiences for our guests, we combine art and engineering, varying the thrill level to best complement the story that's being told. The rest of this lesson is going to focus on the design and development of a specific style of attraction that we call a dark ride. A dark ride moves an audience through a sequence of scenes where we control elements like lighting and sound to bring a story to life. And we'll focus on 3 in particular. The first is Navi River Journey from Disney's Animal Kingdom, where you experience the bioluminescent rainforests of Pandora and meet the shaman of songs. The second is Radiator Springs Racers in Disney California Adventure, where you travel through the town of Radiator Springs and participate in a climactic race with your friends. And the third is Pirates of the Caribbean Battle for the Sunken Treasure from Shanghai Disneyland, where you encounter underwater monsters and treasure and take part in a battle between resurrected pirate ships.
When people hear the word dark ride, they think different things. Often you think of just a ride that's in the dark. Well, that's sort of true, and original dark rides started that way. But now it's a whole genre of rides. Basically, a dark ride means it's a place that you want to be able to have light control. And they're typically done in the dark, and then wherever I want light, I add light. So if you're in the Navi River Journey at Animal Kingdom, you're on a boat ride, all indoors, but it looks like you're outdoors because we have the ability to control the light that way. If you're on Radiator Springs Racers at Disney's California Adventure, then you have parts that are outdoors and parts that are indoors, but it's still a dark ride. And whether it's Pirates of the Caribbean at Shanghai Disneyland, again, big boat ride in scenes that look like they're huge, but again, we have complete light control, so that's what makes it by definition a dark ride.
Dark rides for us are a unique opportunity because they allow us to put the guests in a whole variety of roles. Sometimes you're just going through the environment, watching the action unfold. Sometimes you're an active participant, like in Midway Mania, when you're actually playing the game and affecting the story. But we tend to put guests in all different variety of roles depending on the story we're trying to tell and what we want you to play in it.
All of our dark rides tell very different stories and result in very different experiences for our guests. But the process of creating them always begins the same way. The very first step in the design of these attractions is to create what we call a high concept idea. It's a simple statement that captures the essence of an experience and gets people excited about the idea.
Well, as you can imagine, when you are designing a ride, there are many layers and it can be very complicated. Also, there are many opportunities and a lot of different directions that you can go. So it's very important that from day one, you are able to clearly articulate exactly what your ride experience is going to be.
Often we call it the elevator pitch. Can you explain in 15 seconds your idea? If you can, then that's great because it's simple, it's clean, it's straightforward. Again, you don't have to explain all the details, but just enough to get the person sort of hooked. Like, oh, that sounds cool, tell me more.
To give you an example, I'm working on a current attraction called Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. And our opening overall arching statement is, you get to ride in a cartoon.
You know, what if I could go into a haunted house and interact with the ghosts? Boop, haunted mansion. What if I could go back in time and be in the world of pirates? Pirates of the Caribbean. What if I want to, you know, be flying through space in the dark? Space Mountain. Again, they're simple single sentences that sort of describe what the experience is.
There really does need to be that hook. Like, what is really the interesting part of this experience and the story that we're going to tell?
It's helpful for the guests because within a couple seconds, they can understand what the ride is going to be. Is it something for them? The high concept is also helpful for us as we're designing because it is your roadmap. It's your two-sentence roadmap that tells you what you want the ride to be, how you want it to be themed, and everything that you do can point back to that high concept.
As you can see, it's important to start with a high concept idea that guides the design process as the concept of the attraction evolves. Now it's time to figure out what the high concept should be for your dark ride. Use the next exercise to brainstorm a few possibilities. In the last video, we introduced the idea of a high concept for a dark ride. The next step is to build on your high concept by thinking of as many concrete ideas as you can for what the ride might contain. At Imagineering, we call this brainstorming process the blue sky phase. In this phase, a ride is still just an idea in our mind, so we try to be as open as possible when we take that idea and explore how it will come to life. Let's hear more about the blue sky process.
It's really a time for you to dream.
We sit in a room and just come up with crazy ideas. And they're usually a group of people, usually an artist, and we throw ideas off of each other and we start making sketches and we decide what we like, what we don't like.
You can sketch them on a piece of paper. You can paint them. You can make a clay model. You can describe them just with words.
Because I'm a very visual person, I like to see it all over. So whether I'm writing the ideas down on a whiteboard or that I have a sticky note that we're putting all of these ideas on, it's a really, really great way to see all the various ideas coming from different people and capture it in one place.
You just have to get your ideas out of your head. They're not real until they're on something tangible.
So we're just throwing it out there just to throw it out there and to make sure that everything that we, as a gut feeling that we want to see for that particular attraction and land is captured and thrown out, so that we can actually go through it and see which of those are something that resonate with more than one person, and it's something that we feel really passionate about.
The reason it works so well is it's protected. It's a protected space and time that we just get to explore all the various directions a story could go, all the various directions a ride could go. At some point, you do have to focus back in and come to some solution, but I think those solutions and directions are really informed by our ability to explore all the different directions and what might possibly be.
One technique that we use to come up with ideas for a ride is to ask ourselves the question, what if we... And we do this over and over again. A great thing about this stage is that we don't need to worry about the entire ride or how we're going to build it. We're free to explore different parts of the experience, such as characters, scenes, and anything else that comes to mind.
One of my favorite things about Imagineering is that you never hear the word pretend. It doesn't exist. You'll often hear the phrase, what if? What if we could jump to the moon? What if we could hold our breath underwater forever? What if we could... It's a what if. And suddenly, well, if you could do that, then you could do this, and you could do this, and you could do this, which is cool. And sort of the what ifs lead you down paths that open up opportunities.
We know in cartoons there are no physics, or we call them cartoon physics. So what if we gave the guests an opportunity to feel like they were in a space and they were experiencing an opportunity where there were no physics?
We have the ability in our theme parks to make places where you can sort of do anything. So if you could do anything, what would you want to do?
Another important part of our blue sky process is to create the right environment for our brainstorming. Every idea is valuable, even if it's not used directly or right away.
You want to create an atmosphere where people can feel free to give their suggestions, because there really are no bad ideas or bad suggestions.
There are no bad ideas.
Don't throw out any idea. There's no such thing as a bad idea.
We don't even even have a term for throwing ideas away. That it's always on the shelf.
Even an idea that is ludicrous and you could never build and nobody likes is probably going to lead to some other idea that you are going to like.
Because even the crazy ideas, even if they don't get used, they often inspire other ideas.
What eventually became the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, which is our roller coaster that allows the guest compartment to swing, that was developed as a totally independent kind of technology demo where we just wanted to show that this could be a fun, interesting experience for the guests.
And then from there, you're going to want to make sure that you have the right people in the room. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you're going to want some diversity, but you're going to want that diversity to be diversity of thought. People who have different experiences, have different visions.
If you have two people that think the same, one of them probably doesn't need to be there. Brainstorm at the end of the day is all about that creative friction and getting an idea from one point to another that you never expected.
We all know that we're all wired a little differently. We have different personalities.
So I'm an introvert, and brainstorming is actually very difficult for me. It takes a lot of energy to go into a room with a bunch of people and share my ideas. And yes, it's scary to have your work judged, but that's the necessary step to actually making something.
I've done an exercise where I've asked people to write down their ideas on a piece of paper. Then we crumble up the paper, we throw it across the room, and then people go and randomly pick up the paper. Now you have an opportunity to pitch somebody else's idea. So you're not vested in it, really, right? And you can just pitch it and share it, and that's just one opportunity.
There is no one right way to look at blue sky.
I think it's important for you to do it your way. There are lots of rules and books and recommendations about brainstorming, and I think there's some general really applicable guidelines like being positive, yes and, always build on other people's ideas, never discourage someone else.
And the quicker you can make something real, even if it's just putting it on a page, the sooner you'll get to making something great.
Blue sky brainstorming is a key component of everything we create at Imagineering. Even our biggest attractions can begin with a sentence on a scrap of paper or a quick sketch on the back of a napkin. We'll give you a chance to get some blue sky brainstorming practice in the next exercise. While you're doing the exercise, keep in mind a few things. Try to come up with ideas without worrying about how good they are. Build on the ideas of others rather than blocking them. Make sure not to throw any ideas away. And finally, don't forget that the best brainstorming happens when you're having fun. Another piece of advice for brainstorming is to think about what you want your guests to feel and experience and keep coming back to that as you brainstorm. So far in this lesson, you've created a high concept idea that fits into the theme of your land. Now we need to come up with a story that we really want to tell. A ride that has a bunch of effects and gags might be interesting, but at Imagineering, we want to go deeper than that. That's because we understand that to really make a ride memorable and to really connect with our guests emotionally, it's important to understand what story we're trying to tell with a ride. Crafting that story is what we'll talk about next. Every story has a shape or structure that we refer to as a story arc. It's a sequence of events that sets the audience up for the story and how it will be told. It takes them through some unexpected ups and downs, twists and turns, and ultimately finishes with a surprising, emotional, and meaningful resolution at the end.
A story arc is that continuing narrative that informs your overall story. It is the structure for which you tell your story so that your guests can experience the attraction in the way that you intended.
And in order to do that, you have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so our rides are short stories. Most of them are, 3 to 5 minutes.
And similar to theater, you have your setup.
When you go into a ride, you want to understand who you are and what you're going into and where you're going.
And then you have your experience.
Like any good story, there's conflict and there is change.
Maybe something goes terribly wrong, which you'll see at a lot of theme park attractions intentionally, because that's a great plot point that you can use to quickly advance a story.
And then you have your payoff.
And then we want to have the great resolution at the end, and quickly you've gone into your 4 minutes. So an arc in a theme park is different than an arc in a traditional film in that you have such a small amount of time to tell your story. Pirates of the Caribbean in Shanghai is a typical example of a story arc. At the very beginning, you're introduced to the characters. You see Jack Sparrow. You then go into his world. All of a sudden, you're searching for gold, and there's, Davy Jones. He's not happy about it. We now have to escape. There's a big battle. There's a fight at the end, and we almost get the gold, but not quite. That's a great story arc, and that's exactly what you experience when you're riding the ride.
Once we have a story arc for a ride that we like, we capture that flow with something we refer to by various names like a beat sheet, a beat board, or a storyboard. They're really all the same thing. It's a scene-by-scene breakdown for the whole experience before, during, and after the ride. For example, let's take a look at the Mystic Manor attraction at Hong Kong Disneyland, where you experience the beautiful and enchanted collectibles of Lord Henry Mystic. Lord Henry Mystic has exquisite items from all over the world, and he and his monkey Albert show you a particularly special music box that he has brought back. But it's enchanted, and when Albert opens it, everything is brought to life. You see how some of these objects take on lives of their own. Albert must close the music box and restore order to the manor before Lord Mystic finds out.
Beat sheets, also called storyboards, are a way to put small thumbnails up sort of in order that are telling the story of your experience. And they'll start at the beginning and go all the way to the end. And you don't need many of them, but they hit sort of the highlights or the beats that you want to be telling in your attraction.
So I can't emphasize enough that you want to keep it simple. There's elegance in simplicity.
So it's a really good way for you to do kind of a snapshot of what this experience is going to be about without you going into any lengthy type of writing.
And it's great, especially if you're doing little index cards and pin them up, which is the way we typically do it, because then if you change things around, you just take a card off or move a card in a different order, and it makes it easy to sort of retell how you want to tell your story.
And we juggle them around and move scenes and modify and iterate until we have something that really resonates with the team.
As you can see, getting to an emotional and fun story is a process. Usually the most effective stories are ones that are streamlined and easy to understand. And using a beat sheet will help you to break down your story to clarify and understand your ideas. In the next exercise, you'll have a chance to come up with a beat sheet for your own ride. Welcome back! I hope you had fun analyzing and creating your beat sheets. Another benefit of the beat sheet that you created is that it can help you to explain or pitch your story to others. When you pitch, you present your story in a way that's fun and engaging, and it highlights how your story is unique and what it'd be like to experience it directly. By pitching your story, you can get feedback on what's working and what isn't. Being able to pitch effectively, though, takes some practice.
When you're coming up with ideas, often it may be very clear in your mind what you want to do. But you can't do everything by yourself. You need a team of people to do it, which means you've got to be able to communicate to others what your idea is.
Really, when you think about pitching, it's really not about you, it's about the idea.
Take the pressure off of yourself, because more than likely your idea is enough.
You know it better than anybody else does. So your job is to communicate that to others. So have fun with it. Really enjoy pitching. It's not a nervous thing. People, I don't want to. Enjoy pitching, because it's your way to communicate the thing that's in your head to get other people excited and jazzed about it.
I have to find my emotional connection with the thing, and that's something that makes me less nervous, is that if I feel that I'm emotionally connected to it, then it is something that is going to be compelling for me. And if it's compelling for me, then it's very likely that it's going to be emotionally compelling to someone else as well.
And there's all kinds of different ways you can do that. I have heard pitches where when you have characters involved, the person pitching the story actually acts out the characters. So that's really a fun way of doing it. But not everybody can do that. So there are all kinds of ways to tell stories. So what you want to do is look at what your particular strengths are and use them to tell your story. Sometimes it can be an illustration. You can use a number of visuals to tell that story. You can use narrative. You can use acting. You can just draw upon anything in theater to get that story across.
Like with brainstorming, it's important for us to learn how to pitch to others. At the same time, it's also just as important for us to learn how to give constructive feedback when someone pitches to us.
A critical part of the pitching process is receiving feedback if you're giving the pitch, or giving feedback if you're listening to the pitch. And I think that's the way we get better at what we do is by listening to honest and direct feedback.
And the point of that criticism is not to tear down the idea, but the point of the criticism is to make it the very best that it could possibly be.
You're going to get positive things and you're going to get not necessarily positive things. That's okay. That's part of the process.
Some good techniques for giving feedback to people that are pitching is to be direct and honest but respectful. Also, the compliment sandwich works well, where you say something nice. That was a fantastic pitch. I really appreciate you coming in to do it today. This part was a little rough and we could work on that, but you're doing a fantastic job and keep it up.
I really like that idea, but have you thought about doing this? Yes, and can you add this? And can you add a whole water segment to this ride? You really want to add on to the idea rather than try to break things down.
And I think that's the best way to give critique, and to remember that the purpose of that critique is to improve on what you just heard.
Creating and pitching beat sheets and giving and receiving feedback on them are essential parts of our creative process. In the next exercise, you'll be asked to pitch your beat sheet to a few of your friends. If your audience gets confused by parts, try to be open to what they're saying because they want to help your story be amazing. Pitching and receiving feedback takes practice, but believe me, it really pays off. Once we're happy with our beat sheet, we can go back to our first discussion in this lesson, where we talked about how the motion of the ride itself supports the story. To do this, for each scene in the beat sheet, we ask ourselves, how will motion support this moment? For example, does the motion need to be fast or dynamic to support a thrilling moment? Or does the motion need to be slow and gentle to support a calmer emotional moment? Based on the types of motions that we want for our scenes, we can start to think about a ride system that will best suit those motions. We call this the creative intent of our attraction.
I'd say the motion is critical. That's kind of what differentiates a ride from a theater experience, watching a movie. If you're actually going through a place, then it feels like something's more real.
Here at Disney and Imagineering, we love thrill, but we never go for something that is just thrill by itself, because thrill, like everything else, has to serve our story.
It could be a boat, it could be a truck, it could be an airplane. There's lots of different ways we can move you through a scene, but they're all about supporting the story. The story may require a boat, in which case we have lots. It could be a raft, it could be a log, it could be a traditional boat. The story could be you're flying through space, and it could be a spacecraft, it could be a fighter, it could be a space truck.
Are they going to be walking through it? Are they going to be flying through it? Are they going to be floating through it?
There may be a motion platform on the vehicle that moves the guest compartment around, so you may feel like you're being bumped from side to side. On a coaster, you might feel launched, and so high dynamics pushing you back into your seat and then braking you, pushing you forward. But it's all about what your body's doing as you move through the attraction.
But the motion is all designed to support the story that you're telling.
But once again, ask yourself the question, how are the guests going to be experiencing the attraction?
What we really like to think about is the types of motions and what kind of feelings those convey. So I have one example. I was working on Luigi's Rollicking Roadsters, and I had my creative director come in and say, okay, we want a ride that feels zippy. We think, what does zippy mean? As a mechanical engineer, your job is to quantify things and make them come into a reality. So zippy is just kind of like, oh, all right, this is a very feely term, but what does it physically mean? And so what we did is we sat him down in a roller office chair and started pushing him around and saying, does this feel zippy? Is this what zippy feels like? And so very quickly, yeah, zippy is very dynamic. There's a lot of turns and motions, and that's the feeling that supported the story of I'm dancing with my family at a beautiful wedding.
Once we understand how we want the ride to feel at various moments in the experience, we start looking for the best dark ride system to achieve that desired creative intent. What's great is that we have many different ride systems to choose from, and at Imagineering, we sometimes even come up with a new one to best service our story. Whether it's a powered or unpowered boat, a tracked or trackless vehicle, or a vehicle suspended by cables or an overhead track, each ride system has its own unique advantages and characteristics.
Soarin' is an incredibly unique ride platform developed by one of our most senior ride mechanical engineers. It's a very gentle and beautiful and wonderful flight simulator, basically, where guests are lifted off of the floor in front of a large IMAX screen and able to experience some of the dynamics of hang gliding and flight over a variety of areas of the world. It's just a totally visceral, very unique, wonderful and beautiful experience from beginning to end.
So within the discussion for Avatar's Flight of Passage, this idea that you get to ride a Banshee was very, very intriguing from a ride perspective. So we took a simulator system to come up with something that is brand new so that we could tell that story and deliver on that promise that you actually get to ride a Banshee.
The Pirates of the Caribbean attraction in Shanghai has a very different type of story than our other Pirates experiences.
It starts off feeling just like a normal boat, but then strange things start to happen. The stranger the story gets, the stranger the boat motion gets. Sometimes you end up going backwards, sometimes you end up going sideways.
And because of that, the timing of the experience was very critical. We had to have you exactly where we wanted you and looking exactly where you needed to look in multiple places in the attraction.
The creative lead wanted the boat pointed at this really dramatic scenic element for the entire scene, and our traditional Pirates ride wouldn't do that.
That meant we had to come up with a brand new ride system, and the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction in Shanghai uses magnets. Yes, it's a boat, yes, it floats, but we're pulling it and directing it via magnets that are underwater.
And the magnets go in different paths, which can drag different ends of the boat in different directions, so it can do a 360-degree spin, it can go forward, backward, sideways.
The vehicle and track system that we selected for Radiator Springs Racers supports the story in many ways. It allows you to go very slow at a creep speed when you're inside the building, when you're meeting the characters, when you don't want the experience to be about the vehicle, you want it to be about the characters in the town that you're in. But then once you leave the building and you enter the race, that vehicle can also support extremely high-speed maneuvers.
We have two vehicles racing side by side at the end, and one of the two vehicles wins. Well, we had never done a ride like that before. So that required us to come up with some changes to our ride system to support it. So we ended up with a ride that had a switch that brought you side by side, and then you race through, and we also made it random, so you don't know which of the two sides is going to win. That was all something that was brand new.
So it was a nice combination of something that can be thrilling when it needs to be, and it can be slow and calming when it needs to be.
In the next exercise, you're going to study different ride systems and choose the one that best supports the story of your ride. Once we're happy with our beat sheet and with the ride system that we've chosen, it's time to start laying out the path of the ride vehicles. We break down our whole attraction into individual scenes. In each scene, we have one or more story beats that the audience gets to experience. So we have to lay out the track so that each scene has time to play out without ride vehicles backing up the ride. Let's find out more from our Imagineers about how we design the layout of our attractions.
Our challenge on every attraction when we're laying it out, whether it's Pirates or Racers or any of our attractions, is fitting this unlimited world that you're used to from the books and the movies into a teeny tiny little place and building that exists within our parks.
The first thing you want to think about is the story and what scenes are you wanting to show. What scenes are going to advance you from the beginning, the exposition, all the way to the finale?
And we'll typically place those scenes around in the real estate we have available in the ride building, and then weave the track in and out of those scenes.
And so once you kind of set those up, it really helps you understand how you want to move through those scenes.
The layout of Radiator Springs Racers is challenging as probably any of them.
Part of the attraction, you are actually outside and you're experiencing the land, and then you go into a show building for an interior experience.
We wanted to build the entire town of Radiator Springs inside this building. It's challenging to weave all that into the building, but not end up with a ride space where as you enter the building, you can see it all at once. You want to present it to the guests in an orderly fashion.
So often when you're laying out an attraction, you just start.
We start with pieces of track of how fast, how tight can it turn? How quickly can it move through a particular space? And we start drawing those pieces like they're puzzle pieces. And we start moving those pieces around and connecting them together and drawing them out on paper, put tracing paper on top of that, trace it over here, put another one over here. Okay, how's that going to fit in the building? Okay, here's the size of the building we're going to have. This is going to be able to fit here, so that means that we can do this. And you try to put the puzzle together on the table, just like you're doing a jigsaw puzzle.
I guarantee you your first path isn't going to work, but that's okay. That's why it's called a first path. Now you see where it does work and where it doesn't work. You'll start to say, boy, I really like what I did here where it sort of comes back on itself. That's sort of neat. Great, you're going to keep that. Boy, I don't like over here where it comes against, it's too close to the wall and I really need more space because I want to have a scene that's bigger, or I really want to add a scene where I've got a big screen I get to project into. So you'll start to push and pull and squeeze to fit the entire ride into it. We have a whole group called pre-visualization, and they allow us to look at a ride before we build the ride. And depending on the type of level of design we're at, it could be very, very early in the process and all you're seeing are big white blocks that represent the scenes that you're going through, or it could be very, very detailed, all the way down to seeing the individual bricks on the side of a building that you're going past in a scene. It just depends on what level that you need to go into to help communicate your idea.
And then we usually end up back with the paper on the table again and then start that process again until we find something that at least fits in the building.
Different designers use different approaches. If I already know it's going to be a dark ride and I've got a constant speed vehicle that's going to go 4 feet per second and I want the ride to be 3 minutes long, well, that means my track's going to be exactly X number of feet long. Well, I can take a piece of string that's that long and now sort of weave it onto a piece of paper and see what I can fit inside the box, because I know the vehicle traveling on the piece of string is going to go the right speed and it'll take up the right amount of time in the ride.
There are also a lot of factors that go into layout design that aren't immediately obvious.
Do you want your guests to see one another? Is that part of the experience? Or is it very important that they always feel like it's very intimate and they're the only ones in that space?
Often people forget the things that you don't see when you're on an attraction. But when you're in one of our attractions, there'll also be maintenance areas.
A place where we can take the vehicles off and work on them while the ride is still in operation, or a way to get vehicles off and get them back on without taking the ride down.
The ability to evacuate the attraction if you have a loss of power or a breakdown of the attraction.
Well, that has to be designed into your experience. Well, that's additional space that needs to be taken. That's additional ride track that needs to be placed inside your building.
We also have to think about reach envelopes, which is making sure that there's a clear enough space around a vehicle that no guest riding could touch something or reach something that might potentially harm them.
Fitting them in is the magic of what our people do when they're laying these out. Is how do you create the impression of unlimited space within the confines of a physical building? And so we use different technologies, light, dark, sound, a lot of times smells, to create the sense that you're in a very large, very immersive space when you're really winding your ways through the narrow corridors of a building.
So, layout is where art, story, and engineering really come together to create unique experiences that take our guests' breath away. In the next exercise, you'll have a chance to start designing the layout for your own ride. As you do this, feel free to revisit earlier parts of this lesson to modify your story beats and scenes. So, we just learned how the layout of an attraction is both an artistic and engineering challenge. Another critical challenge is the timing of the entire ride itself, which can involve thousands of events. From loading and dispatching vehicles, to triggering the start of scenes, to the motion of individual props, and to activating the sounds and lighting effects that are needed to really bring scenes to life for emotional impact. It's like a gigantic clock with thousands of moving parts all connected together to do one thing really well, which is to tell an exciting story. But there's an important factor to consider. We want to get as many people as possible through the attraction so that everyone at the park has a chance to experience it. We call this measure the capacity of a ride. As we're about to hear, Imagineers understand capacity really well.
Capacity is one of the most important metrics that we look at from the ride engineering perspective. This is how many people per hour can we put through that ride system. And the more people per hour that we can put through the ride, the shorter the line is.
So we want to get you onto an experience as fast as possible, which means the more people we can get through attraction, the better.
So it's our goal to deliver, the highest capacity attraction possible while still meeting the creative requirements of the ride and in delivering, a compelling, interesting, and wonderful experience.
Capacity is a really important concept to understand, so let's talk about how we calculate it. Capacity is the number of people per hour that can experience the attraction. And that means that the capacity is equal to the vehicle capacity times the dispatch interval, where the vehicle capacity is how many people fit into each vehicle, and the dispatch interval is how often a vehicle leaves the station. For example, if the dispatch interval is 10 seconds, that's 6 cars per minute that are dispatched into the attraction, or 360 cars per hour. And if each car holds 2 people, That's 2 times 360, which is equal to 720 people per hour. So the 2 key factors to controlling capacity are the capacity of each vehicle and the dispatch interval. Just like everything we do, trading off those 2 factors requires us to take both artistic and engineering considerations into account. Let's start by looking more closely at vehicle capacity.
For something like Radiator Springs, it would have been great if it could just be you and your date together on that ride. But when we only put a few people in a vehicle, that capacity number goes down. So it's a goal to get as many people as possible within that vehicle without dramatically changing the experience or the story that we're trying to tell.
On Shanghai Pirates, we really wanted to get a lot of people through this attraction, and so we made our boats a little bit bigger. So there's 30 people in a boat.
You can't just go for big because sometimes big doesn't work. So going back to the example of riding the Banshee is a very intimate experience. So if you had a situation where, I don't know, 20 people are getting on the Banshee with you, that might kind of diminish that overall feeling that you are riding it.
There's other things to consider. For instance, if a vehicle is larger, even though you get more people on it, it takes longer to load now because you're loading more people.
At the end of the day, our only options are vehicles filled with a large number of people that are spaced quite far apart, or vehicles with just a couple people in it that are very close together.
For our dispatch interval, we have to consider how long it takes guests to load into and out of our vehicles. The more people that load into a vehicle, the more time that it could take to dispatch them. Given the vehicle capacity, the dispatch interval determines both the total capacity and the maximum length of time that each scene can play out. Let's hear more about the trade-off between these 2 factors.
That dispatch interval, which is established at the beginning of an attraction, sets the timing for the rest of the experience for our guests. And if it's 15 seconds, we have about a 15-second timing to get a vehicle into a scene, have the guest experience that scene, and then get them out of the scene so that it can reset for the next vehicle that's right behind it. That really establishes our scene timing, because a vehicle only has 15 seconds before another vehicle is on its bumper.
Well, if you want to be able to tell a story that has a definite beginning and a definite end, or a scene that has a beginning and an end, then you need to be the only people in that scene during the duration of that scene.
In Shanghai Pirates, we have several scenes where it's a big projection screen, and we need to make sure that only one boat is seeing that at a time. So the layout of the track and the timing and the spacing of the boats is critical so that you swing into one screen and you get to that moment where you're the only one in that screen seeing the whole thing, and you have to get out of there before the next boat comes in.
In the Indiana Jones adventure, vehicles are 18 seconds apart. Exactly 18 seconds apart, which means your scenes can never be longer than 18 seconds. Ideally, they don't want to be more than 15 or 16 seconds. Well, the finale of the attraction has you coming up to the big rolling ball, and Indy is hanging on a rope, and you're there to save him, and then all of a sudden you crash through the floor, and well, that entire scene is 17 and a half seconds long. That's as close as we could make it. We would love to make the scene longer, but now you're too long considering how your dispatch interval and your vehicles behind you are.
And it's a really delicate dance to make sure we're getting the most for the guests and giving them the most show possible, but able to do that, you know, every 15 seconds for 18 hours a day, 365 days a year.
To recap, the timing of a ride is integral to the storytelling experience and to our ability to allow as many guests as possible to experience an attraction. Ultimately, it all comes down to vehicle capacity, dispatch interval, and scene length. Timing is an important concept to understand, so we've created a ride simulator for you to use to test the timing of your own dark ride. The next video will introduce you to the simulator, which is really cool. Have fun! We've created a ride simulator to help you figure out the timing and layout of your attraction. So I'll give you an overview of how you can use it to create and test your own ride layout. Here's the station. This is the load area where you leave the station, and this is the unload area where you enter the station. You'd use these buttons to lay down sections of the track. You can also remove the last track section by clicking here. You complete the layout by closing the loop, running the track back to the loading station. You can also use this button to place the scenes in your story. When the ride vehicle enters the pink section that's associated with a number, that triggers that scene to start playing out. If you need more or less time for your scene to play out, select the scene and use this slider to adjust its runtime. Here's how much track you've laid down. We also estimate the total runtime of the attraction. Now, let's simulate the ride by going to the Run tab. You can adjust the dispatch interval, the capacity of each vehicle, and the playback speed using these sliders. We can start the simulation using this green play button. This countdown clock shows when the next ride vehicle will leave the station. Let's see what happens if we speed up the playback a bit. Increasing the scene time causes vehicles to slow down, and decreasing the scene time causes them to speed up. If two vehicles are experiencing a scene at the same time, the pink region turns red to warn you of that. That happens when the dispatch interval is faster than the longest scene time. Finally, the current capacity is shown here. In this exercise, your goal is to lay out your track within the perimeter of the ride building. But you also need to make sure that 2,000 people can experience the ride per hour while avoiding having more than one vehicle in a scene at any time. You should also make sure that your run time is over 2 minutes. Good luck with laying out your attraction. Many Imagineers from different disciplines come together to design an attraction, so we often create models when we're working on a ride. Once a model is built, it's used to analyze aspects of the ride long before we pour any cement. Models allow everyone to get a visual and tactile sense of how a ride will look when built at full scale. Some of the models are physical and some are digital. Digital models are a great way to simulate the dynamic motions of a ride experience. They allow us to make quick changes on the fly without having to worry about construction concerns just yet. It's important to keep in mind that the goal of model building isn't to make something beautiful and absolutely perfect. Instead, models are meant to communicate your creative vision as well as the spatial layout of the attraction.
Modeling is a key component to our design process because it's cheaper to modify a model built out of foam than it is to change steel and concrete in the real world. It also allows us to make decisions much earlier in the design process than we otherwise would be able to, because you can see it in physical space and get a better understanding for what this attraction is going to be and how it's going to look from different angles.
It's sort of the way that everybody can stand around the table and look at the same thing at the same time. When you have an idea in your head, it's only in your head, nobody else can see it. You may be able to sketch something out, but even sketching it out only gives you sort of one view and one perspective of one part of it. When you actually build a model, that brings something into 3 dimensions. It lets you get down into it and look really low and sort of walk around. And what's behind that thing? You can tell those things when you're looking at a physical model.
Different disciplines would come down, meet together, and negotiate on where things would sit.
They come out and they say, oh, I understand what you're doing now.
Sometimes you may need to literally lay on the floor and put your eye at the same level that a person would be if they were in your model, because I really need to look at it from that point of view. Other times you may lift the model up and put it up on a table and get right down so you're looking at the level of the model to get into the model.
Because you can see what the guests are going to see. As they're coming around a corner, when's the first person make it around that corner? What can they see? Can they see the other boat? Can they see the sets? And maybe you need to make an adjustment to make that work.
So we build both physical and digital models, and digital models, they work hand in hand because digital models can give us a type of information that we may not be able to get from physical models. We're looking at more real world information now. We're using real scale, we're using real buildings. So what we get from a digital model is the ability to, in virtual reality, actually ride the attraction through a headset so that we're actually getting the attraction experience before it's built.
We build lots of different types of models at Imagineering, and they all serve a different purpose. You may do a quick and dirty model where it's just a massing study and it's just made of white blocks and that's it. You just sort of want to see how big is this relative to something next to it and sort of how much space does it take up.
Where we're literally just taking cardboard and paper and we're putting something together so that we can understand spatially what the early concept or idea is. And then we'll go to more sophisticated models as the design develops even more, where we'll go in and we'll sculpt foam. And we'll make something that's a little bit more sturdy and hardy and more detailed.
So this is one of the early models of the Radiator Springs Racers track, and we were laying out a lot of the outdoor track section of how the vehicles would move through the outdoor rockwork and environment as they went on the racing sequence. This gave us a great representation for what we were going to have to build eventually as far as track and road systems to support the racing sequence.
You may go all the way to what we call a show model, which is a highly detailed, perfectly painted, beautiful, full color design of a model that literally will look exactly like the full thing will look like when you're finished. It serves a different purpose. That may be used by the team to do a color study or a lighting study or understand the context of something relative to something nearby, and everything in between. We do lots of different sizes, lots of different scales.
A scale model, so if you have a 1 to 50, let's say, that means that 1 inch in the model scale means 50 inches in real life.
So we try and make something rough and small first, and we refine it, iterate it, scale it up until we have something that's relatively big scale and highly detailed. So much so that it can actually be taken to the site where we're building the attraction and used as a physical reference for what rock work and scenic elements should look like in the real world.
It's important to remember that a model is a tool. It's not, you're not making a model to show off your model making skills. You're making a model because it helps design, influence your design, and problem solve parts of your design. So when you're making a model, it's a thing that changes constantly, because as you're making it, you realize something doesn't work, and then you change the model.
Build a lot of models. Don't be afraid. Don't be married to an idea. Be willing to trash that model and start over when you need to.
You sort of have to play to your strengths. Some people may be really good at constructing the physical walls. They make it out of paper, they make it out of cardboard. There's different materials you can use. Others love to paint on it and do the detailed work.
Don't spend too much time on one particular area of your model. I would say it's best practice to rough in ideas, work really quick, and then start to go in and refine those ideas.
The easiest is to start by placing the entire thing on the ground as a nice big outline, and then building up your scenes. And don't worry about building it from beginning to end. Start with the parts that's easiest first so that you can get comfortable building a model. But the goal will be to get all the parts finished before you start your filming.
It really makes your attraction design come to life if you can build a model and take maybe your phone and go through it and see what exactly that's going to look like. Just drawing it on the paper is fine and seeing it in the computer is fine, but when it's really dimensional and you actually see that video, that's real.
In the next exercise, you'll have a chance to build a scale model of your attraction. I'd suggest that you start pretty rough, and once you have the entire model first put together, go back and gradually add detail to it. When you're done with creating your model, use a small camera, such as the camera on a cell phone, and run it along the vehicle track to create a video preview of your ride that you can share with others. We hope that you've enjoyed learning about how we design our attractions. Keep it up!